Welcome back to Evenet Stream. I'm joined this morning by Muvhango Lukhaimane, who's the Pension Funds Adjudicator. And we're doing a series executive meet and greets so that we get to know some of the personalities that are in our industry a little bit more. Muvhango, good morning.
Thank you very much, Chris, and good morning to you.
Fantastic. Nice to see you. Give us a bit of a sense. We the women behind the office. So I'm trying to figure out what got you to start in your career into law to begin with, and then how that kind of shaped your decisions and influences on you to eventually end up as the Pension Funds Adjudicator. Give us a bit of a sense of that journey.
Well, believe it or not, I was actually an accidental lawyer. Uh, yes, I think my parents had it all set that this one is going to be a doctor, but then and put me in the school and everything, but then life happened, and then by the time I had to apply, I had applied so late that they said to me, you can only do social work or law. And then for some reason, I just couldn't see myself as a social worker. Then I registered for law. And I think that given all my other interests, watching TV, we were the generation of LA law,
Right.
and all that stuff. So it was all glamorous and that. And I think I just settled into that. Started off at the University of Venda. And then when I was in my final year, I was lucky enough to participate in the first South African moot court competition that was being run by the Center of Human Rights that was at the University of Pretoria. And then it was held in Harare. And while I was there representing the University of Venda, my presentation was so good and all that, even though on the legal question we didn't win, one of the center directors was in the panel that was adjudicating us, and then they invited me to apply for my LLB into the University of Pretoria. And that's how I landed up at the University of Pretoria for 93 and 94. What they didn't tell me was that it was full-time Afrikaans at the time, but we were the last actual full-time Afrikaans class. But lucky, my father was a high school Afrikaans teacher in his earlier years. So I just sort of sailed through the 2 years of 93, graduated at the end of 94, and that is me.
Okay, interesting. Well, loss for the medical profession, gain for us as an industry to get you on our side. So you spent time before becoming adjudicator as deputy pension funds adjudicator, and then from there into the full role. What were the sort of challenges and things that you faced at the time, and how did that help shape your kind of leadership style as the pension funds adjudicator?
I think that if I can tell you the story behind that 1 year appointment as Deputy Pension Funds Adjudicator, I think you would know that at the time the office had gone through some instability. So I had actually applied to be the adjudicator, but at the end, cautiously, I think so, Minister Gordon at the time said, well, let's just try this out on a 1 year basis. And my only question to him was, will I be measured on performance, or are there other things? When he said it's only on your performance, then I said, I am happy enough, even though I am a mother of 3. If you're only going to measure me on performance, then we are good to go. I'll take the 12 months, and then we see at the end of that. And I think it all worked out.
Okay, which sort of leads me into my next question. The state of the office that you found it in at the time. I mean, there were certain things happening, and you're coming into the role and the changes that you brought about. Give us a bit of a sense of how you found the office and what your strategic take was to change this going forward for the better. What was your, give us some background on that.
I think like any other office, I found a staff that had gone through quite a bit. in terms of changes in the leadership, management, and so to some extent, then that there was then the all too big question that everybody asked you when you met them, which was the backlog. So, but I must say that I also found staff that were motivated to start. Some, I think they really had capacity issues, but the motivation was more or less there for you to be able to cobble together a team and start working. Unfortunately, to some extent, also there were no proper systems sort of in place, so there wasn't a proper performance management system in place, and therefore it was difficult to you had to make sense and start saying, if this person is a senior and they are only working this much, how come they are being paid this much? Why is this one a junior? And so it took some time to sort of say, may I have the status reports into that? But at the same time, there were already complaints that were ready to go out, that were drafted, that I had to review. So I had to do two things at once. I had to work on the organization and also work on the complaints that were in the office.
Right.
And they had also signed off. I remember I started in June. They had also signed off. We were the first office to sign off on the response system, but it had not been configured to the extent that it was supposed to be in order for us to be able to be PFMA compliant come audit time. So I had to postpone the launch of the system. Get in, I remember, I think we got in what is one of these two big audit firms? It was not the blue one, the other one. What is the other one? The orange and whatever one. Yeah, we got them in to come and say to them, look, we need you to map a workflow for us and everything and that. And then also in terms of the permissions, who can do what on the system and that. And one of the most critical decisions that I had to make at the time was whether we migrate the active cases of the old system onto the new one, or whether I start the new one fresh without with new complaints.
Yeah.
Then I decided that we would start the new one with new complaints and not migrate the old ones, which worked out so well, because as we ran down the complaints on the old system, we then came to a point where we had 700 complaints or so that didn't have files or anything, because the old system was just an Excel spreadsheet that sort of was just logging the name of the case when we received it. But the actual correspondence was sitting in hard copies, not scanned onto anything. So then we got to this stage where we had the 700 complaints and we had to say, what do we do? Then I decided that if anyone had taken the trouble to lodge a complaint with our office, then we better get closure for those. Then we put together a small 3-person team. Then we sent letters to those complainants, because the contact details we had, and said, you lodged a complaint with us on this date. Please advise us if we finalize that complaint, or what if there's something. People came back to say our matters have still not been finalized. Then we asked them to resubmit the complaints. And it was very heartening when at the end we were recovering money for those people that for some money was sitting waiting for them, not claimed, death benefits not finalized, all sorts of things, until we finalized all those cases. And we were happy that the whole of the old matters were finalized. So I found an office that was largely running hard copy, and you had to then put it a little bit into electronic now and go on the response system. And the response system, when we got it, it was a system that was developed for municipalities in the UK. So you can imagine taking a complaints management system that is for service delivery things and then converting that into something that can do complaints on the scale of financial services, on the scale of pensions, and really have that be real time and that. And we went through many iterations of that before I think also the long-term insurance ombud back then took it up and started using it. And today, the new NFO is actually functioning on response. So and we continue to improve on it because we learn new things. We want to give you new data and all that. But where it all started was way back when we had to really find some sort of automation for our office.
100%.
Also, at that point, I had to physically move the office from Sandton to Pretoria. So there were some staff that were unhappy, and then we had to make a decision to say what is it that we do and all that. You know, you sort of also factor in the fact that to some extent you lose some stuff because it will become, but we put in some other measures in place to try and mitigate the cost to them. And then eventually within the year we moved to Pretoria, to where the office is now.
Yes. But I mean, yeah, having sort of inherited a backlog, and I think you guys did a magnificent work in clearing that and getting through that. But then, you know, on the one side of things, you know, you get the old stuff out of the way, but then the new stuff starts popping up. Your experience with, for example, I know that, for example, with Two-Pot, probably had a bit of an escalator in terms of the numbers. Can you just share some of those stats with us and your experience?
Yes. Before Two-Pot, we were sort of averaging 750 new complaints a month. And since October, we are now averaging about 1,000 complaints per month. We will see whether this dies down or not. But given that the main driver of these complaints remains employers' non-compliance with the payment of contributions, until something major happens from that front, the medium term looks like we will remain that way. But from a so if you look at our annual report also at the end, which will have 6 months sort of Two-Pot related matters to March, it will show you that again those things then just fell into the same sort of category. So our categories in terms of what we deal with has remained the same, but we have seen quite a bit of increase, not in category or what, but really in number terms of death benefit matters. I think also we have been very lucky with the coming into operation of the FST, because what the tribunal has done really, it has allowed people to be able to check our determinations without it costing them quite a lot of money. And in some instances where funds have sort of tried to sort of go roundabout and go directly to court without using the FST, in matters where we really and truly believed that the outcome would be quite adverse to members because we cannot defend our matters in court. We have been fortunate to have senior counsel really come on board pro bono in some instances to assist the complainants, and the outcomes of those matters, some of which ran right up to the Constitutional Court, have meant that not only do they reinforce our mandate and the way that we go about in doing our investigations, but they've also added on to our powers by granting us all sorts of things that we didn't exist before, or we were limited to say, but given that you do this, you should be able to do this.
Understand. Well, I tell you what, unbeknownst to you, I went in just in prepping for our chat this morning. I went and jumped onto one of these AI, chat GPT type arrangements. And I asked, the prompt was actually quite specific. I said, give me a sense and source information from the media and reports and everything as far as wide and as wide as you can. And give me a sense of how the industry views Muvhango's tenure as adjudicator as one of generally of success or failure. And I'm actually going to read you the response, and I think you're going to be find this quite interesting. I just says here, the market views Lukhaimane's tenure as largely successful, particularly for operational reforms that you spoke about, backlog elimination, and consumer-focused rulings. All right. It continues to say the introduction of your referred to fund process, or technological adaptations and stakeholder trust, evidenced by survey results and ministerial praise, are strong positives. And it concludes by saying, Lukhaimane's tenure has been successful in enhancing the OPFA efficiency, consumer protections, with media praising her leadership and reforms. Her focus on fairness, as seen in rulings prioritizing dependents' needs and member rights, aligns with her mandate. Now, I think that is in summary, I think a very good view of how the market sees you. I personally see, having known you for a number of years, and and well done. So it's not just the industry that knows you guys have done a sterling job. AI seems to be aware of that as well. Um, so it is. It is. I wanted to ask you as well, just inspirations in your life, people or situations, or, what inspires you? What sort of makes you get up in the morning, and, and what influences on your life have been important to you?
I hope this doesn't come through very cliche, but you'll understand why it is like that. I think my parents had quite a big influence on me, because I saw them come from very humble beginnings, achieve through hard work,
Yeah.
but in there they had time for humanity things. For example, my dad was a preacher, and still a history professor, but also
Okay.
he didn't leave that aspect of being a history professor only to his university students or to his department and all that. He actually made us, hence, my middle name is Antoinette.
Hmm.
So really, really after Marie Antoinette. So we were raised. My mother, on the other hand, was an English teacher. So it was a very forceful combination, in that the one person got us interested in history, from all aspects of history, from European history to African history to cultural historical things. And of course, my mother on the other side, in terms of literature, I mean, we were reading all sorts of books when we were 11, 12, 13. So it was quite a big thing, because the books made you sort of dream about this old ancient English or French lifestyle, and it married it all. You were able to use that from the context of English back into the historical context. So I think throughout, if you look at the things that I have been involved in, and that I don't forget historical aspects of things. I don't forget where, having a vision of where do you actually want to see things pan out. And I think most importantly, what they taught me was around people, to say, you've got to take your time to know people. You must not be judgmental about people when you meet them the first time. And so even the historical figures that I would be interested in would be people with a lifestyle like that. Sometimes later I would get interested in reading, biographies of people that are in business, and just I mean, when I joined, if you can believe how you move through a career. When I joined Liberty, Jack Welch was their thing. I mean, everybody was like, oh, General Electric, Jack Welch, and all that. Today, his methods, people look at his methods of having done things as, how did this person really become this revered person when his methods were also brutal, so bad, so that just because people sort of change through things. So I learned a lot through those kind of just yeah.
100%, 100%. Maybe to wrap up, if I were to hand you the crystal ball and you would say, but hang on a second, let's look at the future. How do you see our future as an industry? And more importantly, what advice can you give to us all in the industry to say, what is it? What is that single thing, if you can pick on something, that we can do better to improve this industry going forward? What advice would you be able to offer?
Let me start off on a light-hearted one and say, to new regulators or people in my like people in positions like mine, you could all try and be more welcoming and not so circumspect. Or I mean, maybe you start off on a blank slate, but when I started off, I almost felt as if I was starting with a very big deficit that I was not responsible for. But then I just thought, you know what? But there were quite a few people here and there that would come and say, well, we will support the work of your office. Just call on us if you need anything and that. But the bulk of the people, for some reason or another, instead of just looking at you as a professional person coming to do a job, to provide a service that is required, they look at you almost assuming an adversarial posture, which is very unfortunate, because I think in the beginning is what it was quite there, and you sort of had to deal with it. But if we can all just focus on the complainant, one of the things that you will see is that our determinations are quite easy to read, and that is something that I really am big on insisting, because you want ordinary people to be able to read these things without requiring a lawyer. You want to use them for educational purposes also, and all of that. So I know that when young lawyers join the office and they give me something, and it comes back with me having taken out all sorts of legalese and then made it simpler, they're not happy at all. But then you sort of have to explain to them to say, look, in actual fact, the simpler you can write, the easier you can explain something, actually shows more intelligence than what you are trying to do. It takes more to convert something very complex into something understandable by everyone than just relaying the complex words and saying everybody get on with it, which is not the point. So I think that we can there is quite a lot that can be achieved, and I think it's quite opportune that we are having this conversation now, because if you looked at the report that was released by the FSCA into complaints handling, it really shows why our office is dealing with these big numbers, because industry is just not responsive to complaints by members. And I'm not so sure why. Try one day and just do what I do sometimes, and call a call center of one of the big administrators. You are lucky if you will be able to find someone who can talk to you about what the issue is. And when they are not able to talk to you about that, they won't escalate they can't escalate you anyway. So that is why people often come to us without having referred matters to funds formally, because there is just this wall where the more important positions we hold, the more inaccessible we become. It should actually be the other way around. I find that many principal officers are very inaccessible. Many chairpersons of boards are very inaccessible. That is why for us in our office, if someone comes and they're insisting on seeing me, I say it's fine, organize a meeting room and I'll go and sit with them. I'm not going to give them a different outcome from what the professional has given them, but if they want to see me, they've got to be able to see me.
100%. Muvhango, that's been quite an interesting talk. Thank you very much for your time. I think you guys have done a sterling job. It's challenging. There's systemic issues as well. But I think generally you guys have done a really, really good job, and good luck for the future. I think you guys have got a lot of work to do collectively. I think as an industry, we all have a lot to do. And so congratulations. I think it's been a nice journey of success, and absolutely all the best going forward.
Thank you very much.